Welcome to the Miller Time Podcast.
Welcome to the Miller Time Podcast.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
You know we people of color redefining success, right?
And we doing it for you.
For you.
For you.
Always.
Always, all day.
Every day.
Every week.
He is good.
All the time.
All the time.
And all the time.
I don't know where that came from. Happy Monday, y'all.
Happy Monday.
We is
back. Back in this thing.
Yeah, we are actually starting a new series for you guys today.
Yeah. So welcome back, but also welcome to this new thing we about to do.
Welcome to the new.
The new.
The new. Today we're actually going to be getting into something super exciting.
Like what?
I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
We are actually getting into our series on life lessons. We're going to be getting into a lot of different lessons that Patrick and I have learned over the course of our lives,
yes,
covering family, marriage, finances, being a Christian, being black. What else?
Being black, being Christian, being married, being people of color.
Being people of color.
Being business owners.
Yeah, we're going to be hitting on a lot of life
entrepreneurs,
lessons.
But also in our careers, being educated, educated on both sides of the classroom.
Right. So we have, this is probably going to be a longer series that we're going to be getting into, but all of this is really going to be framed with the focus on what does it mean to be a person of color, redefining success.
And especially in America. Not anything against all of our Australian listeners and our people in the UK. We appreciate y'all support, and we're going to do the best we can. We can't speak to your experience because we don't know it.
Right.
But at the same time, we know that there are some things that we can relate. And so we hope that as you're listening to us from the UK, that you feel supported as well, because we see you people of color everywhere all across the world.
Yeah. And today's episode is going to focus on Patrick sharing an experience with us, a life lesson that he's learned. And we're going to really get into where did this term people of color even come from? Like, when did this begin? How did it become to identify people of color today? And how you guys can walk away with some tools, some life lessons that can help you as a person of color, and even people who are not people of color, redefine success. And so, I mean, I'm like so ready to get into this. Patrick and I haven't talked much about which story he's going to share. And so let's just jump in.
Let's do it. Cool.
So, babe, why don't you start us off with what has been a big life lesson? And let's, I guess, start off with the topic of family today.
Yeah.
Tell us about a life lesson you've learned.
Sure. So I think just to set this up, this story is going to speak to my understanding of being, I guess we're going to tie this into like people of color, but never mind. Let me just get to my story. So let me just start this off. Hi, my name is Patrick Miller. I was raised in Oakland, California, home of the Raiders. Don't do that. You're a Miller now. You married to me.
49ers.
You married to me. So I don't care where you came from. You's a Raider fan now.
Dang.
Anyway, raised in Oakland, California. I was raised by my grandparents, who took me in, and there's a lot of controversy around that, even in this time. But still, raised by my grandparents, I was spent time with my mom, and I spent time with my dad. But most of my childhood was raised with my grandparents, two African American people who have very interesting, complex backgrounds themselves. One of them being adopted, left on the steps of a person's home and being raised, and another one being probably the youngest of, I want to say like 9, but also being a twin. And so a lot of complexity, not really knowing their own parents, and then also coming in and raising me. And so there's a lot there. Hopefully one day my grandfather's coming in town, so I hope to get him on a podcast. I never really know. I can't get him to do anything. And so I hope that one day I can get him on this podcast. I'm like literally just going to corner him like, Papa, I need you to come in here and be on the podcast.
Yeah.
You guys are going to love him. He is ridiculous. But anyway, being raised by them, I remember, so I'll just get into the story. Being raised by them, I was raised in the house with my 2 aunts. I see them as sisters. They were just kind of younger as well. I remember probably about the age of 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that. They were, the youngest one was in high school and graduated in high school at Skyline High School in Oakland. Yeah, so I was raised with them. They were pretty much a part of the process of raising me as well. They took care of me, taught me how to tie my shoes on the steps in my house and a bunch of different things. But I remember specifically there was a time right before my youngest aunt, Latifah, was going to graduate from high school. She was at Skyline, and I was probably like 5 or 6. I was really young. But I remember we went up to Skyline to go watch a performance that she was putting on with the rest of her dance club in her school. And so we went up there and we're sitting there, and I remember watching, and we're pretty far back. I can't really see. I don't know who is who, except I know my aunt when I see my aunt, because I see, this dark skinned girl with a really big poof, like ponytail in the back of her head. Like she had always had big hair as long as I've known her. And so she had this big poof ponytail. So I can always tell when she was on stage, because like, oh, that's Latifah. I can see that ponytail. So I knew it was her, but we were so far back that it was really hard to make out faces. And so I had this really weird experience at this time of my life when, as I'm sitting in the audience watching my aunt's dance show happen, I'm looking on the stage and I start to see a number of like women dancing across the stage. And I remember thinking to myself, which one of these women do I find attractive? Like, which one of the women am I I'm attracted to? And I remember just kind of taking note in my head, like, oh, I'm attracted to her and I'm not attracted to her. And I'm attracted to her as a 5-year-old. Probably, I don't know what year this was. I think she graduated. I want to say she graduated high school in 1994, maybe 1995. And if that's the case, then I was 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
So I was really young.
Wow.
But I remember looking at the stage and just taking note of which girl dancing that I thought was like attractive. And I was like, this one's attractive. This one's not attractive. I like that one. I like this one. And at the very end, they all kind of line up on the stage and they're like bowing. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, those are the ones I liked. And those are the ones that I didn't like. And it dawned on me that the ones that I liked were the ones who were lighter skin or white. And the ones who I did not like were the ones who were darker skin or black. And I remember thinking, I was like, okay, I like the white ones. I like the light ones for whatever reason. And I kind of, I just settled with that in my mind. And I was like, all right, we left and we went home. And I think maybe some time after that, maybe as I got older, that memory is in my mind because it was just kind of like this solidifying moment in my mind where I decided that this is what I was attracted to and this is what I wasn't attracted to. And as I made that decision, time went on, and then I came to this place of realizing that wait a minute, I'm black. Why am I only attracted to this white skin color but not attracted to this dark skin color? And in fact, my aunt, who was up on the stage dancing, was dark skinned, and she was dark skinned. Her older sister, or one of her older sisters, not my mom, but her sister is a little bit more caramel skin color, just similar to me. And then my mom was a caramel skin color, similar to me. My grandpa has the darker skin color, and my grandma was light skinned. Is really the only person who's really very light skinned in our family. And so it was kind of confusing me how did I get to this point of thinking that the people who were darker skinned were unattractive and the people who were lighter skinned were attractive, or the people who were white were attractive? I have no idea where that came from. I have never, I don't know. There was never a point in my life where I remember someone saying, this is what is attractive, or this is what's not attractive. But I knew that that's what I believed in that moment. And I remember at some point when I realized that I was black, and I don't know when I came to the realization that I was black, but I know I was probably like sitting on the bed of, I think my grandma's bed, watching TV, and something dawned on me that like, what makes me hate myself, or what makes me not like the people who look like me, or the people who come from the same skin color. And so at that point, I remember feeling,
I just want to cry.
Yeah, you can cry. But yeah, I remember, and I never shared this with like my grandma, or never shared it with my aunts or anybody else like that. I think as a child, I had always had thoughts in my mind, and I always like went through this time of processing and understanding things, but I didn't really ask questions. I would just observe and take it in. Maybe I would ask a few questions, that things I really didn't understand, but when it came to like my decisions for what I believed in, or what I wanted, or what I saw, or what I believed to be right and wrong, I really didn't ask too many questions or share that with anybody. I just kind of took it in and settled it in my heart that this is what it was. And it wasn't until later that I kind of like, maybe not even that much longer, like it probably wasn't even like a year or 2 years later, that I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if that's right for me to be attracted to white women and not attracted to black women when I'm a black person myself. And so that's when at that point, I kind of made the decision that that's not okay, and that I needed to be attracted to my kind. I don't know. I don't even know what prompted this conversation in my mind, like to me to have this conversation. There wasn't anybody who had this conversation with me. Maybe I was like watching TV and saw something and saw like a pretty black woman and was like, wait, why am I not attracted to black women? That doesn't make sense. I am a black person. But
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said you were attracted to the white women or the lighter skinned women. So does that mean they were white or like light skinned black people?
They were either like light skinned black people or they were white. But I think most of the time, I would say like, so I know for sure my aunt had two friends that were twins, and they were very light skinned. And I think they were up there on the stage dancing too. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, they kind of fall in the attractive category, but these other lighter white women are attractive as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but realizing, I think that's what it was. I think it was like coming to this place of realizing that like, okay, they're light skinned, but they're not white.
Right.
And then there's these white people. Because my aunt's friends are always over, and she had like a white friend. She had a Iranian friend who I always thought was white my whole life. My whole life I thought she was white until like she came back from Iran with like a hat that had like Arabic on it or something like that, and she gave it to me. She gave it to my grandpa as a gift. And I was like, what does that say? And she's like, oh, it says this. And I was like, or it says dad or pop or something like that. And I was like, no, it doesn't. You don't know what that says. And she's like, yes, I do. I know what this says. I was like, how do you know what this is? She's like, this is my language. I was like, what's your language? And she was like, I was like, nah, you're white. Like in my mind, it took me a long time to realize that she was Iranian, or like come to the place of like, oh, you're Iranian. That's crazy. I had no idea. I didn't even know what Iranian looked like, but weren't what I thought an Iranian looked like. But yeah, so having all these like different races of people in my house because of Latifah's friends. Like Latifah, there was like one friend who was Chinese. She had a white friend. She had the Iranian friend. She had dark skin black friend who like lived up the hill from us. She had these twins, these friends that were twins that were light skinned black people. Like literally had just all these like different complexions of people and like cultures of people that like it was just kind of like I'm figuring this out. Like this is what the world looks like, and so trying to make the decision of what I thought was attractive in that time was like, yeah, it kind of led me to this place where I was like, I made this decision, but I think really kind of focusing on like, wait a minute, these two light-skinned black women are not white, but they're light-skinned, but they fall in this category of black. Yeah, I was like, something's weird. I don't think I should like white people. I remember making a decision. I don't think I should, or at least I shouldn't choose white women over black women. Like, I don't think that's right because I am black. Yeah, and so that was such a like interesting time to come to this place where I realized, and I felt bad because I was like, the people, and as I got older and older and older, and I learned more about like me being black and who I am, that I'm not just a person, but I'm also a person of color. And I'm not just a person of color, but I'm also a black person. And I'm not just a black person, I'm a black man. Or like that really shapes my identity and who I am. And that almost, and that my attraction to a white woman, but saying that I can't be attracted to a black woman, like as I got older and learned more about who I was in the world, I started to feel more and more ashamed of that decision as a kid. Yeah.
And then you settled on a light-skinned black woman. You're like, I'm not going to go all the way white. I'm not going to go all the way to the darkest spectrum of black. I'm going to get light-skinned.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. If I can think back, I think like, if I can think about, let's just pause for a minute.
Remember the time.
There's going to be a big gap anyway. If I can remember back on like maybe my...
Leave, Shantae. Leave.
Okay. If I can think back to like maybe my crushes as like a kid, I like definitely like in elementary school there was this girl named Brianna who was like, obviously she has the name Brianna. What do you think she looked like?
Light skin. Anyone with that name.
Not saying that all Briannas are light skins, but yeah, she was.
I automatically in my life think of who are all the Briannas I knew, and all of them were light skinned. I light skinned black women.
I knew one black. I knew one dark skinned Brianna who went to church with us. But other than that, all the Briannas I know are either white or light skinned.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I wonder what it is that like how people name, like, is that just a...
Well, that goes like names, thinking about names, like me and my friend Amina from school were talking about, like when you hear a name, you automatically get a picture of what this race that associate with names. And when you hear the name Patrick, most likely you'll think of a white man because Patrick is Irish.
That's why I never get any Ubers canceled on me because I got the name Patrick.
I guess so.
Then they see me, they're like, dang it.
I guess so. Like, what? I thought it was white. When you hear the name Courtney, you think of a white woman. Yeah, that is definitely not the typical black name. When you hear Latifah, what you think of?
You hear Latifah, you're like, all right, sister.
Sister girl.
Right.
So I think names often we can stereotype and put boxes in, like, okay, what could this name possibly mean this person looks like, which is crazy how our mind even draws that correlation.
Yeah, but anyway, so I think you're right. It's interesting, but yeah, there was a girl named Brianna who was light skinned black girl with curly hair or straight hair, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Trying to think if I had any crushes on dark skinned black girls. I think I have. I don't know who. But I think I have. It's not that I hadn't ever thought that, I guess, black girls were attractive or dark skinned girls were attractive. I think I don't know what it was. I think because I know, like, I can go through a list of like dark skinned girls who are attractive, but I never like settled as like, I like you. this is the one I like. It's like, probably the complexion has probably been like as dark as like me, like caramel or something like that. Yeah.
Well,
Moreno.
I mean, this conversation could go in 50 million different ways with the levels and the depth. And I mean, obviously you ended up marrying a light-skinned black woman who you often compare to your grandmother, who is a light-skinned black woman. And I think we can say that often attraction could be found in what is like where our attachment figures were. Psychology word for just who raised us, who are we closest, who did we have close relationships to as a child. And so your grandmother played a central role in your life, also your mother, but you probably spent more time with your grandmother. And so seeing maybe what the definition of beauty looked like, seeing how your grandfather treated your grandmother, seeing oh, okay, this is what beauty could look like for me. And then that could be a reason why your attraction has been shaped to light-skinned black women. But also it could be so much deeper, going into our history of how whiteness has affected what beauty means and what attraction means, which, like, let's take it all the way back. That if we think about with even our focus being, what does it mean to be a person of color, redefining success?
Right.
What does it even mean to be a person of color? Like, where did that term come from? We see that if we go back to even slavery days, a person of color, that term was often used with the same term of like being colored. Like if we go all the way back, we see the term nigger with the ER at the end. I know, y'all.
They're going to turn our ratings into rated R now.
Yeah.
Or like, what is it, parent advisory? We're going to get that.
Parental advisory. But that was a common word used for black people.
Yeah.
It started transferring to Negro. And then it started getting to colored person, or you're colored. And so people of color, or a person of color, and colored people were used kind of synonymously. But colored was a term that was used very offensively to denote difference. And so colored began as a thing of how a white person would denote anyone that was filled with melanin.
Yeah.
And so this wasn't just a thing that was like, oh, obviously I see that you're a black person, you're colored. But if you had any lineage of black, Latino, Chinese, whatever colored lineage that they referred to, if that was in your bloodline up to, I believe, 3 to 5 generations, and let's just say you presented as a white person, like you look white,
Right.
they would consider you are a person of color. You are colored because you have color in your lineage.
So, but
Go ahead.
before you even go into that, like, what is it like? Let's really talk about what is it? What is a person of color? Like, who is a person of color? Who falls in that?
A person of
Like-
color is someone who is not white.
So, like,
Otherwise,
like
you
think
would be
about that. Like,
called white.
how big is that group? That's
Huge.
literally like almost the entire world except anybody who comes from Europe.
Right.
Yeah, it's literally like we're talking about the entire world. But I think what's interesting about that is it's not that people of color was the focus was people of color. Like, obviously it's if it's the entire world except anybody who comes from European descent, and even from in European descent, obviously like Jewish people or anybody who was like a Jew in Europe was like even like seen as like less than white.
Right, right.
So the focus is not really people of color. The focus has always been whiteness.
Right.
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 So I just wanted to kind of point that out, because I think a lot of times it can be, oh, it's about people of color. Oh, it's not about white people. But like the idea is that it's always been about whiteness.
Yeah.
It's always been about white people,
Right.
which is why people of color is even a thing.
Right. Like, when you think about it, who came up with the term people of color? Like, when I look at myself, I just think I'm Courtney.
Yeah.
who gave me the label of black? Like, black doesn't know black without white. And
That's
so
true. Yeah.
when we think about slavery and we think about colonization, do you think our native first people knew that they were a different color? Like, everyone looked the same, and it wasn't until white showed up that they saw the difference, and white labeled the other. And so when we think about the term people of color, we have to be aware that this term did not just come to denote anyone that is colored, but it came always in comparison of whiteness.
Right.
And so when we think about what does it mean to be a person of color, it almost, I've been reading some articles and where there's some people who think this is the most politically correct term of like identifying. We don't say minorities anymore. That used to be the buzzword. Like, I'm a minority.
Right.
Now the buzzword is I'm a person of color. But there's even people who criticize that term because people of color can almost put all of us who identify with the ethnic minority and just put us in a box and say, okay, all y'all classify as people of color, and then whiteness is over here. So it's still in comparison to whiteness.
Yeah.
And it's not looking at us as the individuals that we are. And so, I was reading an article where someone was like, I am pissed that an article wrote about Beyonce as this woman of color is breaking bounds and blah, blah, blah.
Don't you piss off Beyonce's fans.
And
you piss off the Beehive.
Yeah, she was like, why can't you just call her a black woman? Like, Beyonce is black.
If you didn't know, black is a bad word.
Black, exactly. And no. That's what the article was saying. It was like, when you hear the word black, there's so much negative connotations. And there's like this image of what we imagine in our minds when we hear black. There's an image that we hear or we see in our minds when we think of Mexican. There's an image we think when we hear the word Arab. All these things, instead of looking at a person with like who they are in terms of like their ethnic background, it feels more passive and it feels nicer to just all classify them together and just say, you're a person of color.
Right.
And like that, for some people it works. And for others, it can feel like you're still not seeing me.
Yeah.
You're seeing me against whiteness, and I need you to see the whole picture. And so, I mean, we use the term people of color redefining success not to go on the realm of like, we're just going to classify all of us together and not see you for individually what you bring, because we believe that it is important to acknowledge how you as a person of color actually have an individual identity as a person of color.
Right.
And so it's not to ignore that, but it's also, we use this label to talk about how people of color have always been against the dominant society of whiteness because society has always been built on whiteness. There's been no other society that has been built for us.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about what does it mean for a person of color to redefine success, it's because success was founded on white values, white principles, white standards, white everything. And so sometimes even white research, when we think about research was done and experimented on people of color to advance science. You think they were experimenting on little white kids?
No.
No, because they precious and they have huge brains, and black people have little
Asian,
brains.
Yeah.
That's actually research that came out with the eugenics movement and all these things.
Right.
So we bring in all these facts and research to just talk about, one, it's important for us to realize that often mindsets and narratives that we have about how we see ourselves, how we see society, how we view our reality has often been shaped unconsciously by this narrative of what does it mean to be a person of color has always been compared and denigrated compared to what does it mean to be white. And so when we talk about, like even with Patrick's example of what is beauty, what does attraction look like for me? Why is a 5-year-old black boy attracted to whiteness? Like, why is that more preferable?
Not even just like attracted to blackness, because it's not just that I was like attracted to whiteness. Like I literally made the decision in my mind that this is what's attractive and this is what's not attractive.
Right.
Or maybe not I made the decision, but I identified that this is what's attractive and this is what's not attractive.
It was like as a 5-year-old.
Yeah, as a 5-year-old.
As a 5-year-old, what messages are we taking in as children that shape what is attractive? Like,
well, I think even like I'm not alone in that. Like there was already a study that was done where they brought a bunch of kids out and they said, and there was like a spectrum of kids starting from like a very white skin to very dark skin.
Yeah.
And they asked the little kids to point at the picture or point at the kid that was the smartest.
The doll test.
Oh, there was a doll test. And I think there was a picture test too, though.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but pretty much either point at these dolls or point at these pictures and tell me which kid is the smartest kid.
Right.
And so they would point at the white kid.
Right.
And
which
then
one
they would
is
say,
the
well,
nicest kid?
Right.
Point
What
at
was
the
that?
white one.
Yeah.
Which kid is the most beautiful? Point
at the white one. And then it would say, which kid is not smart?
Right.
Or which kid is the, and then they would point at, which kid is the bad kid? And they would point at the black kid. Mm-hmm. So I think that no one's going around. There's no school. There's no instruction or curriculum, quote unquote. There's no curriculum or anything that is designed to teach everyone that darker skin, like, or people of color or darker skinned kids are unattractive, dumb, bad, or anything like that. But the way, like, it just points to the fact that society is set up in a way that shows us that even little kids, even 5-year-olds, can pick up the fact that my skin color or skin color makes the difference.
Right.
And then, like, we pick that up and we see that and we run with that and we start to make decisions. And as a 5-year-old, here I am sitting at a school dance where there are multiple different colors up on a stage of people. And I see them, and the decision that I've made or what I've identified is that, the white skin is what's attractive and the dark skin is what's attractive. Like, I pretty much did that test on myself.
Yeah.
to like I asked myself the question and I like allowed, it showed that I had already been influenced without even recognizing it, without even, like, there wasn't a moment, I can't remember a moment in my mind where I learned that, hey, this is wrong, or this is what's right. And I don't even know what brought me to the point to where I recognized that I was a person of color. But when I finally came to the realization that I am a person of color and it dawned on me, then I knew it was wrong for me to say that I'm not attracted to my own kind.
Right.
For whatever reason, because it wasn't like anything legit. It was just, this is what's attractive. This is what's not.
And I mean, that really, what you're summing up is internalized racism, where because dominant society has always been exalting whiteness, that's not even like when we think about history and media representations, like you think of the Brady Bunch show, you think of like, help me think of some other white shows. I'm just always watching
everything
now.
I watched on Nick at Night. I mean, the Brady Bunch.
Everything was white.
Like I watched a lot of the Brady Bunch. Was probably like I Love Lucy. I think Ricardo was probably supposed to be a Puerto Rican man or something like that.
But
I had no idea.
Played by a white person.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So with all these like representation of white, it's not like you said. It's not like anybody was explicitly showing like black is bad. I mean, that message was definitely there, but at least in media representation, it was like white is right. White is the standard. And so slowly, once people started getting like, oh, wow, we're being racist, then we actually learned this on Blackish about like, or Mixedish about like the token colored person would then be invited. They would be the token colored character.
Or like, then we got diversity.
Yeah, we got diversity. But still, it was like, why is it only one?
Right.
And so now, like, we're getting into these things of like realizing with internalized racism is why do we hate our kind so much, or why do we exalt whiteness over our kind? Why is it that it's always more preferable to be lighter, which colorism itself like is not just shows up in blackness, but colorism shows up in almost every person of color background, where you hear grandparents say stay out of the sun, like lighter skin always looks better, or bleach your skin, like we want yours, like look at Michael Jackson, Why would a dark-skinned black man get to the point of bleaching his skin where he looks white?
Allegedly, we don't know.
Allegedly.
They say it was vitiligo.
Vitiligo, yes. We're not denouncing nobody's experience. But we just have to think about, like, how, as a person of color, do we get to this place of realizing white is right? And it starts from the most subliminal messages, I think, that we receive as children, and that we don't have the maybe the people or the ability to have conversations about, why do I think this way? So you as a 5-year-old having this internal monologue, maybe you don't even have the ability to articulate out loud, why do I think white people look better than black people? Like, Grandma, I'm having a little midlife crisis right now. Can you help me challenge these beliefs that I have?
I'm having a beginning life crisis.
A beginning life crisis.
That's the life of a person of color. We have beginning life crises.
The crisis never ends.
Dang. So, let's just shed a tear real quick for that.
Okay.
Anyway.
Moment of silence. Hold on. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So how this is just so deep on so many different levels is, like, even as a person of color, dealing with internalized racism, dealing with colorism, dealing with all these different things of hating ourselves, hating our color, hating our background, and preferring to look more like the white standard, like not wanting to have curly hair, I want straight hair. Not wanting to have a fat nose, I want to have a skinny nose. Not wanting to have big forehead, I want to have, like, all these things that symbolize and get closer and closer to, like, what whiteness looks like has always been a thing that we've dealt with, especially when it comes to, like, appearance and beauty and attraction. And so it makes me think about, as a person of color, you as a 5-year-old had this moment of this internal monologue with yourself, and you don't remember when you realized, like, hey, like, I'm a person of color. I should be accepting my own kind. Why don't I find this beautiful? How now? I mean, this is a life lesson. Like, this is something that you came to realization, but it's not like you had a coach to tell you and call you out and say you were wrong. Maybe there was someone that made a comment and, like, you had some kind of realization through a conversation, but, like, how then, as people of color, do we redefine our mindset of how we look at ourselves and how we look at what's attractive and what's beautiful in other people of color?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. Like, I never came to a place of, like, someone came and told me that I was wrong, and it was a transformation, like, transforming moment. There was a spark. There was never a spark for me. Well, there was, but those sparks happened a little bit at a time. Like, I remember learning about slavery and learning about, like, the history of America, Martin Luther King, and learning about Rosa Parks and all these different things. And honestly, I would say that, like, the way those things are taught and the way that they were set up, at least they were taught for me, I would say isn't very helpful, because it just felt like a story, like a very far away story. But also realizing that, like, not realizing how far away how close we were to those moments, and, like, how they weren't as far as I thought they were, and, like, they just felt like really, really ancient stories. Like, it felt like a biblical story.
Right.
Like, it felt like something, there was Noah built an ark, Abraham had many sons, and Harriet Tubman freed the slaves,
and
like
Rosa Parks.
It's all right there. Yeah. And so I maybe it's just as a kid you have no, like, concept of time, but it didn't really help me really understand it. And as I, like, got older and I started to have experiences and realize that, that I am a part of that. That story is a part of my life, and also I am still experiencing the effects of that today. Where I remember I was with my goddad who is white, and we were going up to St. Elizabeth School in Oakland. I'm gonna say their names. They need to know they was wrong.
Oh, no.
Anyway, so we was going up to St. Elizabeth School in Oakland, and he was like, "Oh, jump out the car real quick. Go in the office and ask," because they wanted my godbrother to go there. So he was like, "Go ask, how do you like get somebody signed up for the school?" So I go in, I get out the car, I walk in the door, and like this nun turns around and sees me, and I walk up to her and I'm like, "Hey, I wanted to know, how does somebody sign up to like be in a school, or is it too late, or can somebody sign up for classes or something like that?" And she was like, "It's not for you, is it?" And I was like, "No, it's for my godbrother." But anyway, so my goddad walks in, and this nun was a white lady, and he walks in and they start talking. She's like, "Oh, okay, blah, 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 blah." And they're talking. He went to the school. So she's like, "Yeah, I remember you, blah, blah, blah." And starts talking. And didn't hit me until later how different the conversation switched from me to like, "It's not for you, is it?" to like this white man who comes in. "Oh, okay." Like there was this entirely different tone.
And this was in the 21st century.
This is me at like 14,
Yeah.
15. So
You probably
yeah.
had cornrows. That's probably why she was like, "What's going on?"
Nah, I didn't have cornrows at this point. I think I cut my cornrows. I already had them cut off. Get out of here. Anyway, yeah. So there was like experiences like that where I realized that like, dang, was that because I'm black? Like that's crazy. Like I usually blame my teachers for failing me, saying it's because they're racist. It's because I'm black, knowing that it was just because I didn't turn in my homework. But like, yo, this is a real experience right here.
Yeah.
It was wild. So yeah, I would say then eventually coming to this place that like I recognize that I am a person of color. I'm a person of color, and I am also a black person. I would say probably started with those experiences, hearing stereotypes and learning all these different things, and hearing some stereotypes about what it means to be black and all these different things, and being like, "Oh, that is true in my life." And maybe that probably shaped and formed a bit of my identity of being a person of color. But I would think that the truth is that when I started to recognize that I was a person of color is when I realized that I had to do things differently than what my white counterpart would do. I came to the realization that things wouldn't be as easy for me, or people wouldn't look at me the way they might look at another white person. Where there have been times where our dog Kratos, if I'm walking Kratos, who's a big red-nosed pit bull, who's the friendliest as can be. Like literally, if you broke into the house when he was guarding the house, he'd be like, "Here, let me show you where everything is. Let me show you where this stuff is." Like he is the friendliest dog. When I'm walking a dog, people stay away. Like sometimes people are like, "Oh," and they like turn, like make sure they get away. When my goddad's walking a dog, they're like, "Oh my god, what the cute dog!" I'm like, all right. But anyway, I've never been maybe as appalled as I should be, because I never really know how to respond in those moments. But I think what those lessons have come to teach me is that there has already been a system that has been set in place for whiteness. And because that system has already been set in place for whiteness, anybody who is not white, hence a person of color, if you are a person of color, that system is not set up for you to succeed in the system of whiteness.
Right.
And so because of that, not because, hey, we need to call ourselves what white people have called us, but recognizing because this system already exists, and for hundreds of years, this system has been going, and people have adapted to the system and used this system and believe that the system does not exist, and are actively even perpetuating the system. In order for us to succeed, we have to recognize that the system is there and it exists and it's real. And in order for us to succeed, even white people have to come to the recognition.
I was literally about to say that. I was like, let's just speak a moment to our white people that we love.
Yeah.
Because there's so many white people that are in our lives that are very special to us. And so sometimes when we introduce the podcast as People of Color Redefining Success, I've had people say, "Oh, so it's only for people of color. It's like, no. It's for everybody. But we finally want to give a platform to exalt the coloreds.
Don't say the coloreds.
I'm a colored, so I can say it.
Okay.
We want to give a platform to exalt people of color because there's not many spaces for us. And so speaking to our white counterparts, being able to accept the white privilege that you have been afforded by society could be very difficult because sometimes you can't see it. Sometimes you don't know how you've been afforded power and privilege over people of color because maybe you didn't start slavery. So you don't understand why you're getting punished for your ancestors doing.
Also, you might be like, your life might be, you might have some challenges yourself in your life.
Right.
And you might be like, I had to work hard to get what I got.
Right. I grew up poor as
nobody
a white
handed
person.
me anything. I had to do all this. And that may be very well be true.
Right.
But I think the thing is, what you have to recognize is that though no one handed you anything, there was no one who was actively like setting up systems and roadblocks in your way to stop you from being successful.
Right. And a white person that is working class would always be more willing to get into an upper, or not more willing, but more likely to be raised into an upper class.
Yeah.
Any day over a black or another ethnic minority that grew up working class. Like the system is way easier to be able to rise up the ladder of success for a white person because just on the color of your skin, not based on anything. Because a lot of white people will say, well, I earned this. I worked for this.
Yeah.
I busted my butt to get to my doctoral degree. But the thing is, yes, we're not acknowledging hard work. We're just saying it's a lot easier for you just based on how you show up into a room.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to not feel like you're being blamed when people are like, yeah, white has always been right or white has always been exalted over color. But to say, like, get to a place of acceptance of like, okay, I can see how the system has had an unfair advantage. I may not be actively a part of oppressing other people, but I have benefited in a lot of different ways that other people have not had that advantage of having.
Yeah, I think before you even move on with that, like there was a article that came out. I forget who it was, but I think I sent it to you.
What article? I guess he's finding it right now.
I'm gonna find it right now. Oh yeah, I'm about to pull out this article. I'm gonna pull it out right now. Hold on. Don't do that to me. Don't rush me. Don't rush me. All right. Okay. All right. This research was done by the New York Times. New York Times. It's called "Extensive Data Shows Punishing Reach of Racism for Black Boys." And pretty much what this like article does, like anybody can read this, and it's like it's crazy. They do a really good job of like creating graphs, and they just talk about how most poor black boys will remain poor as adults, while white boys raised in poor families are far better off. And then it also talked about how it is more likely for a really, really wealthy black boy, someone who was born into like wealth as a black male, that it's more likely that they'll like die as a black man. And it is more likely or actually, so I think what it was that a really wealthy black man would end up in a poor class, and a white male would actually end up, who was raised in a poor class or working class, would actually end up better off than most poor black males. What am I saying? I'm sorry. The statistics said that it was more likely for a poor white person who was raised poor and white to end up in a wealthier class than a black man who was raised really wealthy and had a lot of money. And so the statistics are there. I mean, honestly, it's like a great article. I would read it. It just, they do a really good job of graphs, and they kind of show the difference of how people end up. But yeah, statistics show it. I mean, no matter what, regardless of what you feel and regardless of what your experience has been, when you look at graphs about the entire US of A, and you see just how often black people are put at the bottom, and how often and just how hard it is for a poor black man to actually raise and go to another level, then you have to start to ask yourself, what's really going on here? Like, is this all black people are just not working hard? Is this that they're not striving hard enough and they're not taking advantage? Is it because rap music is holding them back? Or are you going, like, is there really a serious problem here? And I think that's really what the truth is that you have to realize that it's not you. It's not necessarily your heart of hearts that is making you racist. But it really what it is that you are benefiting from a system of racism that was set up and allowing you to benefit, and you are choosing not to acknowledge it. And that there is racist.
And it just reminds me, because I'm learning psychological assessments right now in school, and we were reading what contributes to having a high IQ.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
Reading lots of books?
Maybe.
Having a mother and father in the home?
Maybe.
Okay, tell me.
I mean, you're actually speaking to a number of things, which the top factors that contribute to a high IQ is your educational environment, like having access to like enriching educational experiences,
private schools,
such as books,
nice private schools,
having access to good nutrition, aka 3 square meals with vegetables and protein. When
with
you
no,
think about
like,
it, most
hormones and stuff in it.
No GMOs. Another thing was access to secure housing.
Wow.
Another thing was a strong kind of like family base, secure family base. Mm-hmm. So when you think about it, how many people of color have that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to go with the stereotype that people of color, nobody has good nutrition, nobody has housing. But when we think about as a marginalized community that is often faced with more community violence, poverty, things like this, because we're fighting over access, we do not have easy access to these things that are more affordable and accessible to white people. And so that's how you can grow your IQ, y'all, if you think about what can, because IQ is not stagnant. This is something that can grow. Mm-hmm. So when we think about as a person of color, how can we actually grow towards success in a system that does not make it easy for us? That there are often things that we just don't have access to. We don't have access to knowledge. Dang. We don't have access to resources. We don't have access to the money. And so tying everything back and wrapping it up for you guys, and how do we apply everything that we're talking about, like going into Patrick's story, how does any of this apply to Patrick as a 5-year-old seeing some light skinned and white people and being like, I like them?
Well, what's crazy is before we even do that, like what you're talking about is like surviving versus thriving. It's like literally there's no way that me as a black man in America, that if I am focused on just surviving, if I'm just focused on like, I got to keep my head low because I don't want the ops to see me and start shooting at me, or I got to make sure that I'm not caught slipping, you know what I mean? Or like, I got to make sure that when the rollers pull up behind me, that they don't pull me over and they shoot me because they thought I was going for a gun. Mm-hmm. Or I got to worry about like all these things that some people probably don't even like consider in their life.
Right.
That like, if I got to worry about all this stuff, that like, there's no way I'm worried about thriving. I don't care about my IQ.
Right.
Like my street IQ is high because I'm worried about surviving right now. Like I'm worried about making sure, and I know that's not every person of color's experience, but I think recognizing that, like growing up in Oakland, I recognized that was like that's a real thing for me. Like, even though I wasn't like gang affiliated, like at any moment, if the police pulled up on us, like I was gang affiliated in their eyes.
Right.
And because of that, like at any point I could be shot. I could be, you know what I mean, arrested. I could be searched, or I could have been whatever. But, so I'm not going to be thinking about thriving, like growing and becoming extraordinary and creating my own extraordinary life, because I'm so focused on just thriving.
Yeah. And that's a system that has made you have to live like that.
Right.
And
yeah.
I mean, I joke, or not even joke, I get mad at Patrick when he leaves the house without his ID.
Girl, don't be telling the police going to be listening to this to go try to pull me over.
He be leaving the house sometimes. I'm like, Patrick, where's your ID? He's like, I don't need my ID. We just going to Trader Joe's. I'm like, if we ever got pulled over by a cop, the first thing they asking is your ID. If you do not have your ID, why wouldn't they just take you to jail in that moment, or just shoot you, and nobody would ever know who you were? They can't ID you.
You're right, babe. You're right.
And as a colored, you have to think about these things because of the system.
As a person of color,
we see Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. Black lives do not matter, and every other colored life doesn't matter either. Mm-hmm. And so we have to think about these things because of the system that's put in place, where white is always going to be in the place of power and second guessing and oppressing and thinking of these ways to hold people of color down. Maybe they're not doing it on purpose, but the system's just been set up that way.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so going back to what you were saying, how does this all tie in? Mm-hmm. I think for any of you people of color that's out there listening, and even white people who are listening and supporting, and because you are an ally, we support you and we appreciate you.
Ally, we love our allies. Ally is not a noun, it's a verb.
That's deep, babe.
Do you know what that means?
No, tell me. To
be an ally, it's easy to say, I have black friends. I'm an ally.
So you're not just an ally just because it's not just friends. Who you are. It has to be an action.
It has to be an action. Ally is, I am actively using my power and privilege. Let's just talk about the whole Chelsea Handler Netflix documentary. Yeah. Maybe that's her way of showing she's an ally, but putting money into a Netflix documentary to show that she's an ally. Uh-huh. But I'm really interested in how she's actually using her white privilege to actually uplift people of color.
I think the best image I saw, I don't even remember what this was. There was a video of a black man who walked into a courtroom, and he gets up and he stands up on the podium, and he literally just starts yelling about like all these different things, these injustices that are happening, and he's like going on and on. And as this is happening, the police get up, and one of them go for their baton, another one get up, and they're like literally about to get him. And like we all know what's about to happen. Like this dude's about to get slammed on the ground. He's about to get punched. They're gonna start yelling, "Stop resisting!" while they like knee him in his head, and like he's just gonna be hurt. This white woman stands up and gets around her, and she literally starts to block this starts to block this black man. And as she's blocking this black man, one of the police officers puts his baton back, and he's like literally trying to make his way around her. And she's like literally like a linebacker, like stopping. And it's just like little white woman, and she's like stopping them. And these are some big police officers, and they like, it's almost like they can't get around her. They're like, oh, we can't get this black guy because this white woman is stopping. It's like literally she decided to use her privilege to stop these officers from harming this black man as he got up to speak about all these injustices that were happening at this courtroom. And so I think like that was the perfect example of like someone using their white privilege to protect black people, where it was like, yo, like they're about to hurt this black dude, and I know that me as a white woman, they won't do that to me. So I'm going to stand right here in their way, and they're not going to hurt you because I'm right here, and I recognize that my privilege can protect you from this. I thought that was like an amazing image of like being an ally. Yeah. But anyway, I think that the reason why we said this is one of the things that when we talk about people of color, we're not saying people of color because we want to isolate or say like, hey, we don't care about white people, we don't love white people. But I think the real thing is realizing that there's already a system in place that has separated white from color, and recognizing that there's already a system, we have to become aware of it. Our white allies have to be aware of it, and then recognizing that it exists we must actively design and create our own path to success.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to say, what does success look like for me and how do I make it happen? Because the truth is that following the pattern that has already been laid out, the normal path that everybody, will follow can lead you to tons and tons of debt, high interest rates on your mortgage, and a job that can't pay it off.
Right.
And so you're living check to check and then won't be able to retire. So you're working for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's the path that's laid out for you.
Yeah.
But if you recognize that that path is already there, and if you can redefine success for yourself, then you can create a success that looks good and is right for you.
And how does all this tie in with your life lesson?
Oh, the reason why I tied it with my life lesson, it was because when I came to the realization, all right, so going back to my story, when I came to the realization that I was a person of color, that I was black, and that my family was black, and the women in my life were black, and that I had this attraction towards white women and this disattraction towards black women and dark-skinned women. Huh?
Not disattraction.
Is that not a word? Disattraction?
Disgust?
No, I wasn't
Dislike?
disgusted. I guess what it was intentionally saying that I'm not going to be attracted to these women.
Being apathetic? I don't know.
Whatever you want to call it, y'all.
Okay.
Anyway, when I recognized that was the choice that I had made, and I realized that I was a person of color, I had to redefine for myself what I was going to be attracted to, or what I said was attractive. And I had to redefine for myself what I thought was beauty and wasn't beauty. And I had to recognize that as a person of color, if I believe that only whiteness is attractive, then what I am saying is that I'm not attractive, or my family's not attractive. When I was able, and I know it's crazy to think about me as like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old doing this.
Yeah.
But when I was able to say, no, this isn't what I want because this isn't me, that I was able to redefine for myself what was attractive and be able to like accept that this is who I am, and I'm going to love myself, and I'm going to love those who look like me. And
who are from your bloodline.
And who are from my bloodline. Yeah.
And I think this isn't to say if you are a person of color and you like someone from a different race than you, that something is wrong. We're not against interracial dating or marriages or attraction. What I think Patrick is speaking to is like the internalized racism that he was having to face, of questioning, why is this what I consider more preferable and why is this better? Oh, it's because what I'm believing about myself and my people. And it wasn't until he took the time to like challenge those beliefs and those mindsets about how he viewed whiteness versus blackness that then he was able to see and embrace and accept, like, one, of course, black beauty, but really it was his own beauty. Like it was an internal thing.
Wow, that's deep.
Amen.
It was my own beauty.
It was his own beauty of like,
Dang.
as a person of color, I cannot hate what comes from me. And so I think I just want to clarify that it's not to say like, if you're black, you should only be dating black people. If you're Latino, you should only be dating Latino.
But it does say something if you're a black person and you like, I don't like black women because they loud. I don't like black women because they ratchet.
Right. I think
like,
that's when there's the concern. If it's like, I think black women are actually super beautiful, and I'm really attracted to white people. Like, I think white women are beautiful, but black women are just as beautiful. Okay. But when we have these...
I know the black women out there saying, no!
But when we have these negative conceptions of like, oh, no, black is not cute. Like, black is ratchet, or... Latina women are just loud, or, Chinese women are like this. Like, we can't get into these things of accepting these negative misconceptions about ourselves as people of color and not be willing to challenge them and see where the root came from. And I really hear that's what you were doing, babe, where you took this place of, okay, I find this to be best, but why? Like, where is this coming from? And so with exploring that, you saw that it could have been like an internalized racism of like, oh, I was taught that this was better. I internalized that this was better. And I actually want to challenge that and actually accept that my kind is what is best for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a huge life lesson that many of us don't have the opportunity to articulate out loud sometimes, that it's often something that we have to do an internal dialogue with ourselves on. But it's really important for us as people of color to have this conversation, because it can feel isolating sometimes to feel like, why can't I accept my natural hair? Why can't I accept what it means to be a black man? Why can't I accept what it means to like show up when I'm darker than everybody else in the room? Like, when there's difference, sometimes there can be isolation, and finding acceptance and embracing what makes us people of color sometimes is a journey. And I think we're all on this journey of how can we fully embrace who we are so that we can keep moving toward creating our extraordinary lives.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So we have a reflection for you all. I would say that my big takeaway of just this conversation has really been on the process of accepting who we are. And I'm wondering for you all, what has been your process of coming to acknowledge your ethnic background? So not only seeing yourself as a person of color, but what is your specific ethnicity that you identify as? And what has been your process in identifying yourself in that? Like, has that always been in comparison to whiteness? Has it been by stereotypes you've heard from friends? Has it been media representations or lack of media representations? Like, how have you come to this place? And also, how have you defined like what it means for you to accept yourself and accept others that are within your background as well?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that if we can start to recognize where these standards of beauty and success and all these different things come from, and realize that even if we don't recognize where they come from, but we recognize that somehow we learned this, and it probably wasn't the right thing to learn, and begin to redesign that.
Yeah.
That I think that's the beginning of people of color redefining success.
I love it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think this is it. And we're super excited to continue this series. I think this is a deep series. Even as we're talking, like, there are more things coming up for me as I think about this in my life. And I'm like, dang, man, you know, I got more thoughts on this, but this podcast can go forever, and we don't want you guys to be late for work as you listen to this on your way into work. So we're gonna let it go, and we're gonna continue to bring up some other thoughts, and we'll be sure to remember to share this next week on the Miller Time podcast. Right. So as you guys are going on throughout your day, hopefully you can remember some of Courtney's reflection and apply this to yourself. And then if you have any questions and any thoughts, anything that you want to share, if my story spoke to you and you have a similar experience, and there's something that you remember that happened to you as a kid, please, we would love to hear. So send us an email, send us a text message. We're not giving you our number. But yeah, send us something. Send us a DM, send us an email. You can go to www.cocopalmalife.com and /podcast. You can send us a message, a thought, a question, anything you have, and we would love to respond.
Yes. And we just want to thank you all just for supporting the Miller Time podcast, and thank you for leaving us a review. Thank you for rating us. That is how we continue to get this work out. And so we just appreciate you for leaving us a review on whatever streaming service you're listening to us on.
Because we're on all of them now.
Yeah, and share it with your friends. Share it with someone who is another person of color, or maybe even a white person that you think could benefit from taking part in this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, you have the power to create an extraordinary life.
Yes, you do.
You better believe it.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Peace. Have a good week. Pet Daddy out.